Yes, my name is Bench and welcome back to another After Effects tutorial. Merry Christmas everyone, it's Christmas Day in sunny Australia, and yes it is in fact summer, so to make me feel a little less hot, we're going to be creating ourselves a nice winter snowflakey sort of background. We're going to be creating it with all the native effects of After Effects, as well as using some of the default things we can find in Photoshop. But for starters, we'll be starting in After Effects with a new project. We'll go and create a new composition. We'll do 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second, or if you want to do 30, you can do 30 there, and duration however long you want it to go for. Hit OK, and we're going to create our first new layer. So we're going to go at the top, layer new solid. Our hotkey is Control Y or Command Y, and we'll call this large clouds. We want it 1920 by 1080. We can make sure it is by just clicking Make Comp Size. We'll hit OK, and now we want to put in our effects. So we'll go up to Effect. We're going to go to Noise and Grain, Fractal Noise. And you'll see here, it's this sort of cloudy sort of thing. A pretty standard one for anyone who's used to using After Effects. But we're going to do some changes to the settings. So up the top, we're going to go and change fractal type from basic to smeary. So you'll see now it's kind of got this sort of smeared sort of lines going everywhere. That's kind of the look we want. So we'll go to the contrast now, and we're going to change it to 140. So you can see there, the lines get darker a bit more. Brightness will change to -2, so it's a little less bright. And then we're going to go to the transform tools, and we're going to scale our effect up quite a bit, say to 290. Now we're going to go to the sub settings, and it's going to adjust sort of the overlaying that's happening between the different noises that are happening. So for the influence, we'll go up to 92. And you can see there, a lot of the dark spots kind of become a lot more contrasty and sort of complex. And for the scaling, we'll drop the scaling down a bit so it's quite a bit smaller. So there we go, that's our fractal noise, but now we want to do a little bit of color correction. So we'll go to Effect, Color Correction, CC Toner. We're going to just find some nice icy tones here, so we'll go with a very nice sort of light blue for the highlights there. For the mid-tones, we'll go something like that, and for the blacks, we'll go something very similar as well, like that. So there's our base layer. Now, we might add a blur, so we'll go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur, and we'll just do a very small one, say 6. And this is, we want to check Repeat Edge Pixels. And this is so that it's not overwhelming us with the other stuff. It's just supposed to be very subtle in the background. So that is that layer. We'll go to Layer New Solid again. And this one we will call our Snow Frost Lower. So we're going to be creating 2 of these, but this one will again make sure it's comp size. And again, we'll go to Effect, Noise and Grain, Fractal Noise. And for this one, we're going to select for our fractal type to be subscale. And you'll see it's very similar to noise, but it kind of has these more contrasty complex blobs around. So we'll change the noise type to a linear. Then we're going to bump the contrast right up to say 250 or 250-ish. And then the brightness we're going to drop down to say 140 or -40, sorry. And so we want these really dark areas because these are going to be cut out because of our changing of blending mode in a second. Now we'll also go to the complexity, bump the complexity right up to 20. And then again we'll be changing our sub settings. We want to change the sub influence to say 94. So it's a bit more sort of noisy in there. And we're going to drop the subscaling down to, say, 38, around there. And what we'll do is we'll also add a curves into this. So we'll go Effect, Color Correction, Curves. And we're just going to pull it down a bit so we can overlay some stuff on top. Now we'll go down to the bottom to where it says Layer Name. And we can hit F4 to adjust because we want to see this mode option. We can also click the toggle switches mode down the bottom as well. So we want to change our mode to screen like so. So it sits on top of what we had in the background previously. So there we go. If we want to go back in the end and adjust it a bit, we can adjust the curves. But for now, we'll create our next solid. We're going to call this one Snow Frost Upper, like so. And what we want to do for this one is we want to check the lock aspect ratio, and then we want to make this a little bit bigger. So we'll say 1200. So you can see there it kind of goes over the edge, and that's so that when we animate this, we've got a little bit of overflow for our effect. So for this one, we're going to go to Effect, Noise and Grain, and select Turbulent Noise. And for the fractal type, we're going to select Threads. So it kind of looks like all these worms. We'll go and in the checkbox, hit Invert. So it inverts like so. And then we're going to bump the contrast right up to, say, 240. And then we'll bring the brightness down to, say, -25. Now we'll go into the transform tools for it, and we're going to scale the effect up to, say, 360. And then we want to again adjust our sub settings and bring the sub influence up a bit to, say, 80-ish. Now this is our effect, but it doesn't look really frosty, and so in order to get that sort of look, we're actually going to overlay a couple different effects onto the one layer. So for this, we're going to go to Effect, Transition, and Block Dissolve. And we're going to drag the block transition completion up to, say, 33. Like so. And then we'll actually go to our turbulent noise effect that we have here and hit duplicate. We'll drag it down, and for this one we're just going to adjust the contrast and bring it up to, say, 400 or 404, and we're going to bring the brightness up a little bit as well to, say, -18. Now the other thing that we'll want to adjust is the blending mode for our turbulent noise too. So you can see here the option, last option right at the bottom. For that, we're going to select Add. So you can see there it's kind of overlaying on what our block dissolve was already doing. Now for this one, we want to go to Mode and hit Add. You can see there the difference it makes by hitting Add, like so. So now we've kind of got our base layer here, but we want to do some slight adjustments to it. So we'll go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. So this will sit on top. If we hit Enter, we can call this Sharpen. That's because, you know, Frost, it kind of has that really visibly sharp look to it. So we'll go Effect, Blur, and Sharpen, and we'll select Sharpen, and we'll just set the Sharpen amount to 10. And then I'm actually going to add another Sharpen. I'm going to select Effect, Blur, and Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And on this one, I'm going to bump the amount up to 120. And I'm going to bump the radius down to 0.2. So it just gives a little bit more sharpening. So it really stands out quite a bit there. So now we've got the base of our sort of icy background, but it kind of has some streakiness that goes through it as well. So we'll create those now. So we'll go Layer, New, Solid. We'll change this to white, and we'll leave it as is, so with a slightly bigger solid than what we had previously. And we'll call this ice crack. We'll hit OK. We want to go up to our tool panel up the top here. We want to select our ellipse tool. So with the layer selected, we'll zoom out a bit for this. I'm going to drag out sort of this edge. And what we're thinking about is this edge here. And that is going to be our sort of crack in our ice. So we'll go down to the bottom, we'll select the mask, we'll hit copy. We're then going to click on the layer name again and hit paste or Control V or Command V. And there we go. So we've got two copies of the same thing. Now this second mask, what I'm going to do is in the mode, instead of add, I'm going to go to subtract. And you'll see up here, now it's moved. And now I'm going to hit V. And I'm just going to see the little point here. I'm going to click and drag it away so I get a bit of my line showing. Now I don't want it to be a perfectly sharp line, so I'm going to go down to the timeline here, select both masks and hit F for feather, and it's going to bring up our mask feathering options. And I'm just going to click on one of the boxes and type 9, and it'll fill in all those things. So now they all kind of have a softer look to them all, like so you can see there. So now we're going to add some effects onto this, and I'm going to click the button down here saying toggle mask and shape path visibility so we can see what our effects do. So the first effect I'm going to go to is effect stylize brush strokes. And I'm going to bump the brush stroke randomness and down to a 0 like so. And I think I'll just leave all the settings as they are. It just kind of gives this bit of an edginess to it. Now I'm going to go to Effect Transition Block Dissolve, and I'm going to use that same technique we used before to get the slight sort of shardiness that we got previously. I'm going to bump that up to say 20%. Now I'll go to Effect Distort Turbulent Displace, and I'm going to bump the amount up to 95 like so. And I'm going to turn the size quite a bit down to say 11 or 12, and then bump the complexity up to say there. And there we go. It's a lot more sort of subtle in there, but it's feeling a lot more like a shardy sort of look, which is super sweet. What I can do is also duplicate that layer, so selecting the layer and hitting Control D, and then if I hit M, that'll bring up the masks again. And I can select these two masks, and by hitting Control T, if I bring back the layers on, I can go and adjust the shape, maybe change the rotation, and give myself another sort of shard or ice crack. We'll do one more and we can change the angle again like so. We can even move the path away or change the feather on one of them to give us some interesting looks there. So there we go, we've got our ice shardy sort of layer. So I'm going to add a vignette onto this. So I'll go a layer new solid, and I'll go for like a blue like so. For this one I'm going to click make comp size, and then up at the ellipse tool we had previously, I'm just going to double click it and it's going to drop a mask in there, and then down the bottom I will select subtract and hit F to bring the feathering up, and then adjust the feathering like so. Then for the blending mode we change it to multiply. So there we go, it's blending in there, and we'll drop the opacity down quite a bit to say 25. So it's just a very subtle thing that we have in there, which is awesome. So now what we'll do is we'll just add in a bit of a curves adjustment. So we'll go layer, new adjustment layer. This is our curves. And we'll go to effect, color correction, curves. We're just going to adjust this just to help blend it in a little bit better. Like so. So you can see it's a little softer because I can punch the colors at the end. So now that's all set up, let's start dropping in our snowfall. So we'll go and create a new solid again. We'll make it white and we'll call this one clear snowfall, like so. Now, snowfall, creating snow, very difficult. We're going to go to Effect, Simulation, CC Snowfall. And we're going to uncheck Composite with Original. It's a little bit more complex than that. So flake size, we'll type 20,000, like so. For the size, we'll say 8. We want to really vary up the variation of size, so we'll bump the percentage up all the way to 100 for variation size. For scene depth, we'll just bump it up a bit more, say 9,000. Variations in speed, we'll go to 75. We'll do 25 for the spread. And we'll make sure the opacity is at 100. There we go. We can see it a lot better there. So if we drag through, we can see we've got all this snow sort of falling like so, which is great. But we also want to kind of give the impression that there's some really close to the camera as well. So to do that, we'll go layer, new solid again, and we'll call this our depth of field snowfall, or DOF. Again, we'll go to Effect, Simulation, CC Snowfall, and we're going to set our flake sizes to 200 because we don't want too many of them appearing for this one. So we're going to make the size quite large. So we'll go all the way to the top, which is 15. We'll change the variation size again to 100. Scene depth, we're actually going to drop quite a bit low to say 1,000. Variation in speed, again, we want to match the other one so that it kind of looks a bit more consistent. So for that, we're going to do 75. The spread, we're going to drop all the way to 0. And then we'll bump the opacity up like so. Now, because it's really close, we want to blur it out. So for this, we're going to go to Effect, Blur, Fast Blur, and that'll really blur out those ones that are close by. So we'll drop it up to say 45. I'll just type it and then hit repeat edge pixels. So now you can see we got it, and if we preview that one, you can see we have our sort of blurry snowfall and our more visible snowfall, which is great. So now we've got those two overlaying on top of each other. So that's all good and all, but we want to actually have some snowflakes as well. So we're going to be going and creating a new composition. We'll call it Snowflake, and we'll set the width and height to 200. And for this, we're only going to do 3 frames as the duration, as you can see there. Hit OK, and now we're going to create our snowflakes. So if we go to Layer, New Solid, White, make sure it's comp size, hit OK. And this is the point where we'll go through a frame. So you'll see I've moved my playhead through to a frame, and I'm going to hit Control Shift D, like so. And you can see there it's split my layer. Again, we'll move forward a frame, and again I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D. And there we go, we split it again. So it just saves me creating, because we're going to have 3 different types of snowflakes that we can see. Now, I'm not going to ask you to draw them by hand. Instead, we'll go to Photoshop. We'll create a new composition. Doesn't matter what size it is, just so long as you can see your snowflake. So we're going to go to down our toolbar onto the rectangle tool and going to select custom shape tool, and then over on the side we're going to select our shape up the top. We're going to go and find the snowflake. If you can't find it, just load all hitting things here, which you can access by hitting the little gear of the top right, and this is what comes default with Photoshop. So we'll select that first snowflake. We'll click anywhere in our screen up the top left and hold Shift and just drag it out till we can see it all. Now heading A will give us the select tool, otherwise it's this tool just down the side, the black arrow. We're going to click on the path of the shape that we just created. So you can see it has all these little dots around our shape now. And that means that we have the path selected. So for us, we want to now take this into After Effects and use it as a mask in After Effects. So we're going to hit Control D or Command D. We'll go back to After Effects. We're going to hit Control V. And there we have it. If we hold Control and hit T, that'll let us transform our mask. And we want to hold Alt and Control and Shift to scale our snowflake until it fits our frame, like so. There we go. We'll go to the next frame, we'll select the next solid, and we'll go back to Photoshop. We'll create our next one. So again, just grabbing our custom shape tool, going up the top, and clicking on the next one, then holding Shift, we drag it out so it stays all in proportion. We then hit A and click on the path, and then hit Control C to copy it. Go back to back to After Effects, hit Control V, and we're going to hit Control T after that and scale it down, holding Control and Shift, like so. And there we go. We got snowflake number 2. Let's do number 3. So back in Photoshop, one last time, we'll hide the layer on the right. We're just going to grab the custom shape tool up the top, select our new shape. It's going to be that final little snowflake. Top left of your document, click, hold Shift, drag it out. Now we've got our path as a shape. Hit A so we can interact with the shape. We're going to click on it so we see our little dots. Hit Control C rather. Go back into After Effects and hit Control V to paste it. Control T to change or transform our mask, and holding Control and Shift so our snowflake stays in proportion. We're going to scale it down like so. So there we go. There's our 3 snowflakes. So we'll go back to our original composition. We'll go to our project and drag in our snowflake like so. Now, we need to do a bit of expressions. Rather, we just need to write one expression. And what that expression is we just want to randomize what snowflake is appearing at any frame. Because we only have 3 frames of snowflakes, but we want to have all kinds of different ones appearing, or variations of the 3 that we have. So for this, we're going to right click, we're going to go to time and enable time remapping. We'll click that, and then we'll go down to the little stopwatch that we have here in the bottom. We're going to hold Alt and we'll click on that, and that lets us type an expression. And we're going to type frames to time bracket random bracket 0, comma 3, end bracket, and hit enter. So there we go. You can see there if I zoom in. That is our expression there, frames to time, random 0, 3. What this is saying is that on any frame, randomly pick a frame number between 0 and 3, and frames to time will convert that into the time that the time of our remapping of that layer will be, which now will let us be able to drag this out because we enabled time remapping. So we want to drag it all the way to the end of our composition. Then we'll go back. And now if I move my playhead through, you can see our snowflake is randomly showing a particular snowflake, which is what we want. So I'm going to hit the eye on the side just to hide that layer because we don't need it visible for what we're going to be using it for. And now we'll go to Layer, New Solid, White, Make Comp Size, and we're going to call this one our Snowflake Particles. Hit OK, and then we'll go to Effect, Simulation, Particle World, or CC Particle World. Now all this stuff will appear. What we'll do is we can hit the little soloing button down here, a little circle, so we can actually see what's going on. Now if I drag the playhead through, you can see we're getting this crazy yellow sparks flying everywhere, but that's not actually what we're going to end up with. So we'll start adjusting our settings up the top here. So firstly, the birth rate will drop down to 1, but the longevity will will bump up to 10 seconds, so our snowflakes stick around a lot. Now our producer, what we want to do is actually move our producer all the way up to the top. So firstly, we want to bump the radius on the X out to say 1.5-ish. Then we want to drag it up, so we're going to be dragging the position Y and moving it into negative. And it only needs to be just slightly above the screen, so we'll do minus 0.5. Now for the physics, we want to adjust it because you can see this is crazy raining down lava and stuff. So instead we'll go to the velocity and type 0.5. And for the gravity, we're going to go to 0.01. So it's quite slow indeed. And now we're going to also go to the resistance and type 0.5, like so. So it's even slower. Now what we can do is if we zoom in to see our whole timeline, we can actually click and drag this forward so that we have all our particles falling, and then we just drag the end of the layer like so. And that means that we don't have to wait for our particles to start falling. They're kind of starting before we get to the first frame. That's the beauty of After Effects, is we can do things like that. So you can see it's falling like so. So now let's go into the particle, and we're going to change our particle type from line to textured square down the bottom. And we're going to then drop the little arrow and select our texture layer to be our snowflake. Now for this, we want to choose texture time to be birth. And there you go, you can see we're getting all kinds of different ones like so. Now we want to have our size variation changing a bit more, so we're going to bump our size variation up to 75% and our max opacity to 100. And for the birth and death colors, we will change it to white and white, like so. Now in the extras, we'll just go down to Effect Camera and we can adjust the field of view to be 60. And that gives it a bit more depth to everything. And there we go. If we play our playhead through, you can see we've got our snowflakes falling. If we click off the layer, the grid disappears, and if we unsolo it, you can see it's combined with everything else. Now, in this curves that we created earlier, we can go in and just adjust it slightly, maybe pull some stuff down a bit, so we can see our snowflakes falling a bit easier. Now, what we might also want to do is, you can see now everything's falling, but our background layer isn't really moving. So with some camera trickery, we can actually make that happen. So we're going to go layer, new, null, and we're going to call this null how world null, and we're just going to hit P for position, and we're just going to keyframe just some slight movements as we go forward. So we just want to move it around a little bit, just kind of around the center point. And if you want this to loop, you can go to the end and select that last, our first keyframe, hit Control C, and then hit Control V at the end, so it ends on where it started. Now this is a bit wonky around, so what we want to do is hold Alt and click on the stopwatch for position as well, and we'll type smooth bracket 0.5, 30. And that'll just smooth out the animation so it's a little less wobbly all over. Next we'll go to layer, new, and we'll create a new camera. We can say 35mm or even 50mm. And we'll just hit OK like so. And we want to parent the camera to the world null, like so. Well, like so, like that. And there we have it. But you'll see when this wobbles our camera around, our camera is going to work in a certain way, but some of our other stuff actually wants to go the other way. You can see as I move my null one way, all the particles move the other way, which isn't exactly what we want. So we're going to do some quick expressions on some of our effects on the background, so that we can get it moving around. So we'll scroll all the way down to our large clouds layer. We'll go to fractal noise, and we'll adjust the thing called offset turbulence. So we'll hold Alt, we'll click on that, and it will fill in the content referencing what it already has. So after that, we want to type minus bracket, and then using the little pick whip, we'll go up all the way to the top, and we'll select our position from our world null that we just used, like so. But we want to have a bit more depth. We don't want this to wobble around so much, so stop it. Instead, we're going to also do /2 end bracket. So you can see now we're actually dividing our position by 2 and then minusing it. So now as we zoom out, you can see as I scroll through, in the very background, our null is now wobbling around, or our texture is now wobbling around. Now to save us some time, what we'll do is we'll click on that expression. We're going to copy everything from the minus. So we'll highlight all that and hit Control C to copy it. And then we can paste it into the next one. So we'll select our snow frost lower layer. Again, find the transform offset turbulence, which is that one there. Hold Alt and click it. Click at the end so it keeps what it already has in there, and we'll just hit Control V to paste it. And we'll go to the next one, which is the snow frost upper. Now, because we have multiple layers on top of each other and we want to include this block dissolve animation, we need to actually wobble the position around for this. And that's why this layer is slightly wider than the others. So instead of finding our transform tools, we're going to select the layer and hit P to bring up the position that it has. and then we'll hold our Alt and click the stopwatch. And again, we want to keep what's already in there, and we just want to hit Control V to paste in our new content like so. And you'll notice this has now moved off center. So we can click on it and just drag it more into the middle again. And it doesn't have to be perfect because, again, this is just going to wobble around a little bit to kind of give us that animation movement. Now, the final thing we want to do is find our ice cracks here. And we want to select all of them. Then we want to drag our pick whip and parent it also to the position of, not the position, sorry, the Snowfrost upper, the one that we just adjusted, like so, so that it all wobbles around together. And there you have it. You can see everything's flowing around and moving around, and the preview might take a little bit of time because there's a bunch of different particle effects and fractal noises on top of each other, but you can see that's kind of giving us the look that we want, which is awesome. So you can see the background slightly moving, the snow is falling, and you can get some really interesting effects with this. But that's the icy sort of snowflakey background. If you want to do some variations on this, you can add in different vignettes between your ice cracks or your different layers. You can play around with different settings or hues and what else that you might want to do. Add in contrasting up the top, and you get this really cool sort of snowflakey look. So that's how you create this snowflakey look in After Effects. If you want to check out more After Effects tutorials, then check us out on the Media Workbench YouTube channel. Until next time, my name is Bench. Thanks for watching.